Hey, welcome to our webinar for October. We are so excited to have you guys. I'm Justine Teagan, and I serve as the resource specialist with the discipleship department for the Wesleyan Church. And every month we try to do these webinars, and the heart behind it is just to resource you all. We know that you're serving in churches week in and week out, and some of you are doing that from a paid position, or some of you are doing that in an unpaid way. But our goal is that you'll continue to be connected to people and tools that can help you disciple other people where you're at. So as we do these webinars, we have different meaningful conversations that hopefully you can glean some insight from, but we also save these and archive them. So after today, if you want to go back and reference a conversation when you're meeting with someone one-on-one, or you want to share something with your team, you can go back and find this tool on our website and reference it. So today I'm so excited. We have Brenda Jank with us, and she is with an organization called Run Hard, Rest Well. And so the topic that we're going to be covering is related to that, this idea of rest and rhythms of rest and work together, and how do we do that, and how do we tackle that in a healthy way. And so I'm super excited to have her with us, and we have a couple other guests that we'll also introduce partway through the conversation. But I really just want to start with connecting with Brenda and hear a little bit of her background. So Brenda, first of all, thank you so much for joining us and for your graciousness to share resources and insight and wisdom and time. But can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Just how did you get into this work? What's your background?
Okay. Well, just a nutshell. I grew up in Wheaton, Illinois. I went to a small Christian college in Nebraska and had some young adult adventures in Mexico and Canada, Florida, Michigan. Ended up back in the Chicago area working in an urban setting, doing youth ministry at a church. Met a great guy by the name of Tim, who was working at another church. We got married, and God blessed us with five of the craziest kids ever assembled under one roof. I like to tell people that we have four boys, and that there's going to be a special place in heaven of moms of four boys, and it's going to be a couch, and I can't wait for the day. But our part of Run Hard, Rest Well, and the message is the fact that we were blessed with four children with very significant medical needs. Kind of over the top, three came home through adoption that we knew of, and then we had a son born to us with spina bifida. And in the last 2 years, our oldest son, Joshua, went home to Jesus after years in hospice care, and our daughter, Anna, had a bone marrow transplant. And so I share that because this message is the real deal. God started getting a hold of my heart in burnout in my 20s. The story in a nutshell is I grew up in a church. Like, if the church doors were open, we were there. And I was taught that to rest or to honor the Sabbath meant to go to a worship service. And if you did that, you were good to go. And, more is caught than taught. And all of my mentors, the people who impacted me, were incredible people, but they ran really hard. And so I adopted that. And severe burnout, a medical mayhem, led to an introduction to a book by Marva Dawn called Keeping the Sabbath Holy, WHOLLY. And I'm like, oh, there's something to rest. And so God got a hold of my heart 34 years ago. And it was a Jacob size wrestling match because I am a passionate type A. I live to work. I love to work. And man, God is in pursuit of our souls. And so because I was single when I was introduced, and this wrestling with God of what does rest look like has really traveled through the years. And I've learned it looks different. There's no cookie cutter. We have different needs, different opportunities. And so just always going, God, I want your best. And that opened doors for Run Hard, Rest Well to become a nonprofit. And it's a joy to be here with you today, Justine, and some of our friends that will be joining us later.
Yes. Yeah. So you kind of talked about this almost point of crisis, right? Where you go from like, okay, I'm burnout and empty to like, I find this resource. How did you get from that moving into like, hey, now I'm creating tools for other people? Um,
Right,
what
right,
did that look like?
right. And so from the get-go, we recognized that this message um, really was timely and timeless for all people. And so we really recognized that God was calling us to serve all people. And so we are in churches, denominations, mission agencies, but we're also in businesses and public schools, the military. Um, but our passion is to connect with kingdom first Jesus lovers who are leaders, whether in church settings, church capital, big C, various ways, or business leaders. Because as God's people, we know, love, and serve the author of rest. And yet, so often, we are the most tired people on the planet. If Satan can't make you bad, he'll make you busy, too busy for our own good and God's glory. And so that's our passion, is to come in. And what we recognize is most people are kind of resistant. Like, we know we need wellness, but it's often about food and fitness, and kind of been there, done that. Like, they have lots of head knowledge. Run Hard, Rest Well is not so much a program, but a paradigm shift.
Hmm.
God is giving us permission to run really hard and strategically stop and rest guilt free. And we call this restorative wellness. It comes from Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall lack nothing. And that nothing includes time and energy. I may not have all the time I want and need or energy to do everything I want to do or everything that everyone else wants me to do. But for what Jesus has called me to do, I will have what I need when I need it, and how he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. And so what we highlight, we call restorative wellness, and it's bucket theory 101. We can't give what we don't have. And so we come in to organizations, to churches, and we are passionate about disciple making. We recognize that, as God's people, we're kind of limping when it comes to disciple making. And it's like, because we're unrested. We're stretched too thin. Programs don't bring people to Jesus. People bring people to Jesus, but we don't have time. We don't have margin to be that neighbor, to go out of our way to a family member who has really turned from the Lord. Like, all that takes time, and we don't have time. So we're too tired. We're too distracted. And the distraction is often unhealed wounds and unhealthy relationships, like the healing. And then we're un or under discipled. And so I love what you guys are all about and what you're doing. And our goal of coming alongside disciple makers is really just the rested part. Like, you guys have the other stuff, the equipping, the tools, but recognizing that we need to see what God has for us, that it's both incredibly compelling, like guilt-free, shame-free rest, but also convicting, because when we're not resting well, we're functioning on our own. And in all of our lives, there's good, bad, and ugly. And when I'm not well rested, ugly is coming out of me to the people I love the most, or I'm sabotaging myself and beating myself up that I'm not good enough. And so it is a life-giving, shame-free. We take the pressure off. It's like, guys, um, we've been handed a raw deal. That raw deal is run hard, run harder, drop dead faster. And it's like, okay, together we have to create a community commitment. And that's why we target groups of people. We impact individuals groups because we need to create a community commitment around this. And so we come into organizations and via webinars, via live in person, and we do a really fun, innovative, get out of your seat every 20 minutes, team building experience, often called Arrest That Works. But then we really inspire first real change by equipping the leaders to keep the conversation going. So we ignite a passion for restorative wellness through a shared event, and we keep the conversation going. And our church-wide initiatives are so much fun, so incredible. We can do our presentation in an hour. We try to capitalize on like when is a group together, a natural time, and then we have all these neat resources to just bless, encourage, and one of our core values is short and sweet. We refuse to waste people's time. So everything only takes minutes. It's a single page. It's a sentence. Like that's our sweet spot because we don't have time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is there's so many little nuggets I want to pull from there. And one thought that keeps kind of running through my mind is this message is so countercultural, right? Like the thing that we see in our culture, right, is celebrating success and efficiency and do more faster, a wider reach, like all of these things that we measure as success.
Yes.
And yet this ministry that you're talking to calls us to a different life and calls us to live um, counterculturally. And so I just love that because I think whenever we think about reaching a watching world, we do that when we're living from a kingdom culture, right? So I just love the way that your ministry is kind of calling us into that. Hey, there is a higher way, and not that we drop the idea of reaching or loving people or having a passion for all of God's people out there.
Right.
But we do it underneath like the priority list that God gives us. So just so thankful, kind of for that paradigm shift that you're sharing and what we see kind of throughout your organization. And also love that you're doing this in practical ways, so like you said, you're not just partnering with an individual, but you're coming in with an organization and then trying to kind of set up networks where we're embracing these values together. So I think we kind of hit on some of the main things you do as a ministry. We hit on these trainings, and you do have some books, you do have a website, that kind of thing. One of the things that you shared as we were preparing for all this was a story from John 4:6 that's been meaningful to you. Can you speak to that a little bit, share what we might learn from that story and even from Jesus' example in that passage?
Yeah. John 4:6 has been such a change agent in my life. So it's simply Jesus, tired as he was, sat down by the well. It was about noon. And so it's the beginning of the story of the woman at the well. Oh my goodness. So in that little sentence, so first of all, if you have ever been tired before lunch, you are in really good company. You are not alone. Jesus knew fatigue. Jesus recognized his limits. He was aware of his own fatigue, and he was willing to do something about it. Unafraid and unashamed, he took a break. And that, he just simply invites us to follow his lead. And the miraculous came from that. That story is amazing. And we need to trust the miracle and almost the mystery when we go, I'm going to have some hard stops in my life. And so it's critical. I'm excited that we're going to be talking about limits and self-awareness because and guilt, like those are just really change agents. And so thank you for letting me share.
Yes, yeah, and so there was some like insights that you had specifically. Yeah. You started to highlight those a little bit. Jesus recognized his limits. Jesus was aware of fatigue. He recognized his limits and was willing to do something about it, and then invited us to follow his lead. So at this point, I want to invite, we have a couple other guests who have been they've been impacted by your ministry, but they've also embraced it personally and then been able to share it out to other people. So we have Pam Anderson joining us, as well as Pastor Lewis also joining us. And so I would love to invite you guys into this conversation and just talk about first of all, share a little bit about who you are, maybe take turns and introduce yourselves, and then we'll kind of jump into unpacking what we learned from that story and maybe how you've seen it in your own life. So whoever wants to go first on that.
I can step in, Lewis. My name is Pam Anderson, and I am currently the clergy care coordinator at the district level here in the Great Lakes region. I am also a board president for our small charter school, and just recently stepped down off our church board in Burnups, Michigan. So busy was right up here, yes, for sure. And then, yeah, just really once I met Brenda, have done a 180 with a lot of that. So, which we can get into more later, but yeah, that's a little bit about me, how I came to the program, and it's a fabulous program, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lewis Brandon. I'm here in Vinton, Virginia at Jordantown Wesleyan Church, and I help out a little bit with clergy care for the Shenandoah district, and just got connected with Brenda and her passion through taking some seminars with her. And she just really encouraged me, helped me to understand that I'm a sower, I'm not the source. It's that John 4:6 thing. The one who's filled with living water rested by a well. What's going on here? And then out of his rest, he was able to impact. And I think about that one thing as being a rhythm that Brenda taught about, that God started the world with a restorative rhythm in it. And one of the things that she helped me to see is that when we get into that rhythm, there's bigger picture things that begin to work because we're serving a deeper purpose than just the immediate. So it was good for me. And so as a pastor, I want to champion that cause at my church, because one of the things that I see in the church is that we may start small, but then we do way too much too fast. So it's a constant need to recalibrate, make sure that the boundary for Sabbath is being reset in different seasons so that there's enough that's happening there.
Man.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, so I was just talking to a church here locally in Fort Wayne that is always they've planted many churches. And I got to meet a woman who is a part of a plant, and it's growing and going. And she was on that launch team, and she was introduced to the message just briefly in a couple of minutes. And she's like, Brenda, every church plant leadership team has to have this. She said, we all died. She said, the church is growing, but all of us, the core leaders, eventually pulled back. We just couldn't keep that pace. And yeah, it that recalibrate way too much, way too fast. And man, like we have a race to run. But we need to trust that hard stops are not going to limit our work. It is going to multiply. It is going to multiply our work.
Yeah.
Brenda, it's funny that you say that about church plants, because that's also another part of my job. Is my two directors are the church multiplication directors.
Okay.
And so I really push for this to be a part of that, or for me to be able to present it to them, or just so they have that knowledge of walking in that beginning with it. So we're not coming back, 2 years down the road with yeah, that's perfect.
Right. And it has to be that those questions, simple questions, have to be asked like every week or every 2 weeks. We have to create that community commission that we are going to run really hard, and we are going to rest really well, and we're going to watch God work, and we're going to trust. It's our last surrender. We've surrendered our lives, our tithes, our love, time. It's
well,
hard.
And quite honestly, I personally have just seen in different areas with the program of things then flourishing. The things that you want to flourish because you're taking that step back, and you're doing it from the heart of God. versus your own, your own walk.
Right,
So
right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, we operate in a power not our own. And made in the image of God, like we are gifted. A lot of good happens, but the miraculous that can happen because when we're well rested, yeah, uh, part of it is we're listening. Yeah, he tunes our heart. He's healing us. There's this deep work. Yeah.
So as you're talking about that, I'm wondering like specific examples. Can you think of an example of a time where maybe personally you prioritized rest when it was hard, and yet you saw God show up, or a time when you watched that happen in leadership and then you saw fruit? Like, are there any like stories that come to mind as just as you think about that? Like, what does it look like to see God come through, when we prioritize rest? Or have you
Yeah.
experienced that personally or
Yeah.
watched life with somebody else? I know I'm thinking of for a while, I worked at a church as a discipleship pastor for a long time. And for the longest time, if it was my Sunday to preach, I would spend all like Friday and Saturday, my days off, just like making sure I was ready because I didn't get to do it very often. I wanted it to be good. So I would come in and I would practice. And I felt like a few years towards the end of my time there, I felt really challenged to practice Sabbath, and like I'm going to practice Sabbath. And so I remember that being a hard thing on the weekends where I knew I was going to preach, because I'm like, that means that I'm not coming in on Saturday. Like because Sunday was a work day for me. I mean, I was there for 5 or 6 hours. So I set aside Saturday as a day when I would stop and rest and delight in who God was, like all of those things. So I remember just intentionally it just being this discipline of trust. I'm going to finish up on Friday. I'm not touching it. I'm not touching anything. And I remember one particular time, like the first time I did that, and I came in on Sunday and I preached and it went well, but what I noticed was like a life-giving energy, right? Like it was just this sense of like serving out of an overflow, not one that was kind of forced, like a energy that I conjured up from the outside, but one that was just kind of coming out. So I've experienced that, but I wonder what you all have seen just being immersed in this ministry even more, if you've seen that in yourself or if you've seen it in somebody else.
Well, the limit, and the limit that I fought against the hardest, and run hard rest well, there's 4 rhythms. The idea of Sabbath, rest, sleep, stillness, be still and know that I am God, and then solitude, stepping away from the fray, from our, because minutes matter, hours make a difference, a day away delivers. And of those rhythms, my last one was sleep. And sleep pervasively was that's what got me into the medical crisis. For 10 years, with so much pride, I lived off of 4 hours of sleep. And I have devastated my health. There is a price tag when we don't live in one of these rhythms. And I fight one autoimmune issue and I flirt with another one. But that the limit, my physical limits, like I pitied the poor fools. I would call, that's the Bible talks about, don't call them people. I pitied the poor people that needed 8 hours of sleep because I was just so excited I could do so much more. And so that limit of my physicalness, I fought against that. And it's a long story and I'm not going to go into it, but man, I am healthier at 58 than I ever was in my 20s, in my 30s, in my early 40s. It wasn't until my mid 45, and I was trying to get sleep. Like I was so convicted, but then I couldn't sleep. But my physical limits just frustrated me to all get out.
I think one of the things for me that's been really helpful is that when things are going well, it's kind of like what you said, Justine. You can feel like, I'm having fun. I love what I'm doing. I can work 7 days.
Mhm.
I'm seeing results. I'm seeing God move. The problem is that something gets off in there. It doesn't take faith to overwork. It
Mhm.
takes faith to have a Sabbath. And in fact, when we get in this pattern of overworking, that's when ego really begins to creep in and everything revolves around us.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I caught from Brenda, especially as she talked about the prayer life of Jesus, I just felt the Spirit telling me, you need to take time to pause for sonship. You
Mhm.
need to remember that your identity is not rooted in your results that you're getting, but it has to come from the loving affection of the Father and being with Him. I think we're going to go there from Mark in a little while here, maybe, but I love the story where everybody was looking for Jesus and they couldn't find him. He was just with his Father. And I think so many of the problems for me in ministry, those things, they get recalibrated when I have a hard stop on my day off. And that means the phone is scheduled. The
Mhm.
phone is off at a certain time at night or it doesn't answer. It might come through in a priority, but the day off and you're going to have to recalibrate this in ministry. You're going to have crisis. You're going to have emotional needs. You're going to have seasons that call for different things for you, especially if the church is growing quickly. But you're not Superman or Superwoman. And he has to pour into us before we can pour into others.
I love that tie you're making between Sabbath or rest and our understanding of our identity. Because I think so
Mhm.
often that's um, our deception or our temptation, right? Is to find our identity in our work, and then God using that rest to recalibrate us in our identity in Him. I think it's Pete Scazzaro that talks about um, God using Sabbath rest in the life of the Israelites, right? He called them to observe the Sabbath because they had for years been slaves in Egypt and their identity was their work and their productivity. And so part of him calling them to Sabbath was that redefining, like you are no longer slaves, like you are not identified by what you can produce. And so I don't know, I just love that connection that you're making. Like,
Many times are we tempted to find our worth from our numbers?
Mhm. Yeah.
We are not products. We're people, and they are people, the people we serve.
Mm. Mm.
and to me, the beautiful thing about that is like it's so freeing, right? When you can step into that rest and you feel the Father's delight in you, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Like be still and know that I am God. That whole rest, like resting in his presence. And he's not asking anything of you in that. Like you're stopped and he's delighting.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Mm. Mm. I love that Adam and Eve, their first day of life, God worked and then rested. Adam and Eve, they rested. Their first day, full day of life was rest and then moved in. Like that's really our pattern. And I don't know who, we work from our rest. We don't rest from our work. And yeah, yeah. Mm, this is sweet. I'm taking a lot of notes, guys.
Great. Great. Well, Pam, I would love to pick on you a little bit. What has your experience been with rest, or again watching this unfold in leaders' lives, or what's it been like for you as you kind of leaned into this message or lived it out?
So for me personally, as I said earlier, just as busy as what I was a few years ago, definitely leaning into the hard stops, definitely leaning into the Sabbath and realizing that the Sabbath doesn't have to be a Sunday. Most generally, for most people in ministry, it is not a Sunday. and just really hitting those hard stops and then listening during that time. It's funny, I actually just did, I've done the book study with a group of ladies, and then this past weekend, I just did a retreat with some ladies and presented to about 25 ladies, and giving them, just walking through the program and giving them the permission for Psalm 23. And for them to really lean into Psalm 23 and know that when you're done working at 5 o'clock, you can actually be done working at 5 o'clock and enjoy your family for the evening.
Right.
And like you said, it's so countercultural, countercultural. And another thing that we talked about along those same lines is just realizing that the people around you, which is something I've kind of noticed, sometimes the people around you are so used to the way you were, you essentially are teaching them in the process when you give them your no's. You're doing it for yourself, but in the same process, you're teaching them along the same lines. So I've really seen that. I can't speak enough about the program. I've noticed changes in the women's group that I did it with. People come up to me after the retreat and just thanked me for bringing that and giving it. It was almost like they were thankful that I taught them that they could give themselves permission to not. And that's kind of one of my taglines from this is you have the permission to not, like, just and just leaning into the fact that it's okay to not have to please somebody else, and that you're doing it for you're doing it for God first and foremost, but for yourself and for your family. I've seen a huge change in my kids and my family and the conversations that have taken place, and just their friends, the kids, those kids that are in our household. And just, it's a trickle effect. And that's when I get excited, because I can see that.
Yeah.
And know that all I'm doing is having a hard stop. I'm leaning into those,
Yeah. More is caught than taught.
Yeah.
Like that's our, like, the modeling that we do. And Justine, I wrote down, you said, if I can find my notes, that we're watching, reaching a watching world, that they're watching us, of how we love, how we live, how we rest. And like, it is a ripple effect, like you said, Pam, that it ripples into the people in our closest sphere. Like, that's our big, like, we know that there's a win in this message when it's impacting us and the people close to us, the closest in our families, in our friends, in our coworkers, that that we're cheering that. And it's a sticky message. It's a life-giving, fun, sticky message. And we thrill when people, like, giving people the idea, like, you come in on Monday morning, goes, guys, I got 8.5 hours of sleep. I was outside for an hour. Like, we celebrate, not, oh, I painted my living room. And that's also, like, we're going to celebrate that. But we start celebrating and asking questions of other people. Like, what did you do this weekend? Or what are you going to do this weekend? To refill your bucket intentionally. What do you need?
A couple threads are popping into my head right now. One is like seasonal, like you get into this a little bit in Vantage Point, Brenda, like where you talk about like this looks different depending what season or stage you're in. So I would love to speak to that a little bit. And then another thread that maybe we can grab on later is this idea of guilt. And I kind of heard that some in you, Pam, where you're talking about giving people permission to release guilt. So either one of those threads, like seasonally, what has this looked like as you've walked through different stages, whether, I know, Brenda, you talked about even singleness or married or with kids or in full-time ministry or letting go of different roles. Like I would love to kind of unpack that practically, what does it look like to live out these truths in those different seasons?
Right.
So I'm an event coordinator by trade. I've done it at my church, I've done it at school, and I do it here. And so this upcoming October is an event that I gave up, prayed and prayed and prayed, have done the event for like 7 years. But I just knew that I needed to let it go. And I don't think, honestly, had I not gone through this program and just really leaned into it, that I would have been okay to say no without feeling that guilt. I don't have that guilt about that event. But I also feel I've set people up well for it too. So, and just not, totally walking away from it, not leading well either. So, yeah, and being okay with just knowing that you're doing it for yourself. But again, it comes back to when you do it for yourself, it leans over onto other people. One of my favorite sayings in Brenda's book, is it's brutal to disappoint others and perhaps even harder to disappoint ourselves. So then that lies that therein lies the question, are we, is it us that we're worried about, or is it about us disappointing other people? And I just, that's something we always have to fight with or argue with, but in the end, we know that Jesus is guiding us and we're doing what's best for our soul. I mean, that's what it comes back to. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question or not, but
I love that practical work, just embracing a time of being able to let go, like saying no and what that looks like, and having the permission for yourself even to say that, but also for others, and being I guess just confident enough, right, in God's call to rest and what he's
Right.
asking of you, right, like to handle whatever disappointment may come from that. So yeah,
Right.
I love that.
And definitely seasonal. I mean, I don't know about you, Lewis and Brenda, but for me, it's very seasonal. There's seasons that are really, really busy with kids, seasons that aren't busy with kids or families or jobs or what have you. So, and we have to be okay with those busy seasons too, I think. Knowing that, gosh, from this point to this point, this 2-week span is going to be really busy. I'm going to have to schedule my Sabbath. I'm going to have to schedule my solitude time, just all the things. So yeah, just getting really intentional with those seasons too.
Mm-hmm. I think that's critical. That there are seasons. I think about you as an event planner. Oh my goodness, think about the weeks leading up to that. Craziness, the deadlines, the da 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 da. And so this message that there for every vocation, whether it is pastoring, ministry leader, stay-at-home mom, there are seasons that are more intense. And what I love when we go into that season with an overflow, like I kind of heard that word, oh my goodness, we have more to give. And that's part of the miracle and the mystery that the Lord is going to sustain us. I call it manna in the morning, like, Lord, you need to provide for this time. And so we want to go in. Our son Josh is on the autism spectrum and passionate about aviation. And he shared this story with me, and just bells and whistles went off. And honestly, I have tried to locate the source, and I haven't been able to. So if anyone ever finds it and can let me know, because he just confidently said that when Air Force One, so the airplane that carries the president, made its first transcontinental flight over the ocean, it was about to land, and there was a disturbance on the airfield. And it was judged that this is not safe for the president of the US to land there. And they said, we need to go elsewhere. And then panic set in. There was no contingency plan. And it flew with only one tank, just a typical one tank of fuel. And so thankfully, they were able to quickly secure a airfield not too far away and land there. But then after that, they always flew heavy. That Air Force One got situated with 2 tanks, so that when crisis hit, it could navigate that and get safely back. And ever since that, I feel like we use the term bucket a lot, fill your bucket. And it's like, okay, when we are ministry leaders, the power of having both tanks full. And so in the quieter seasons, we are intentional. We've got those personal retreat times to really fill that tank up so that when it's intense, whether because of crisis, unplanned things or planned things, there's this reserve tank that we pull from. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I also, when we talk about limits or seasons, I think about Elijah. And what a season of, was it 2.5 years or 3.5 years that he was in the wilderness being fed by ravens and the brook? Like the intensity of that aloneness, of that, like, as a kid, I was always like, I couldn't understand why he went running away to a broom tree after this incredible miracle of the altar being lit with fire after this, conflict with the 400 prophets of Baal. Like he wanted to go die. Like what in the world? I'm like, he just witnessed a miracle. But oh my goodness, he's like one of my heroes. Like there are times where there's nothing left, and yeah, he needed naps and snacks. When I have nothing left, it is nap and snack time, like in a major way. That God decided to create a body with limits. We by his design, pre-fall, people needed sleep. He created, and I think that reminds us that he is infinite. We are finite. He is limitless. We are limited. And that builds that trust. And yeah.
I think that also maybe it plays into a little bit of the conversation about guilt, right? Because so often we feel guilt and shame when we have a limit. But how freeing to know if the limit is there by design. And like when we acknowledge it, we're actually living out of God's design for us. But I would love to enter into a little bit of that conversation about guilt. Like what role do you guys see guilt and shame playing in people's struggle to maybe embrace these rhythms? And then what do we do about it? Like how have you seen that resolved for people, or how do people work through that, or how has that happened in your own life where we've been able to kind of move past guilt and shame towards embracing this life of rest that's healthy?
In ministry, I think many times we hold ourselves responsible for things that we didn't cause. You can't carry the things that you didn't cause. You can only take responsibility for your role. And that comes back to this thing of the time. And when she was talking about the plane, that got me thinking about this. In the training, she talked about the buckets. How full is your bucket? And we never know what one particular Sunday is going to draw out, and different seasons draw more than others. And so that's why it's just an absolute constant need for us to have this pattern in this area that reminds us of these things, gets us reoriented in helpful and restorative ways. And some other good things about her teaching that I really liked a lot was just talking about the physical side of it. She mentioned Elijah, God gave him a meal. Okay, he fed him and he slept, all those things that, okay, there's a physical self that needs to be stewarded well, and especially in ministry with the demands that we have. If you don't take care of yourself, no one else will. You have to do that yourself. You owe it to the Lord to love him that way.
Wow. When I think of guilt, another absolute change factor in my life from God's word was from Mark 1. Jesus, was traveling around and already being recognized as a gifted teacher, as a prophet, as a healer. And he ended up at Peter's mother-in-law's house. And she was sick with a fever, and he healed her. And, word spread. And so it says, as the sun was going down, people were bringing to the house people who were sick. And so I imagine that Jesus had a late night that night, that he was ministering and healing. Yeah. And then the next section starts early in the morning before the sun was up. So I think Jesus had a short night's sleep that night. That's maybe why he had to sleep on the boat a little bit later, which power naps are, powerful. But he went up to the hills. In that day and age, we are so blessed today with so many medical treatments, the suffering of people 2,000 years ago. And so word spread. And so I think about all of the people with such significant needs that were coming to the house because they had hope of meeting Jesus, this one who could heal him. And the story, we can kind of read into it that the disciples were content for a while and crowd managing and connecting with people. But that Jesus was taking a little longer than usual. Like the sun is coming up and Jesus still isn't coming down. And so they sent 3 to go find him. And I love that they knew where to look. They weren't up there up the hills, but Jesus was. He was hungry for the presence of his Father. And when they found Jesus, their words to him were, everyone is looking for you. And I hear that dripping with guilt. Like, Jesus, what in the world? Why are you up here? That house is full of people that need you, that need your healing touch, that need to hear from you. And what changed my life was what Jesus responded in that moment was, it is time for us now to go to the next village. What in the world, And it's simply, Jesus was spirit-led and not guilt-driven. He trusted his Father. Like the big game plan, those were real needs, desperate needs that Jesus could have, right there, go and meet. But the Father had a plan for those people. We have to trust his plan, his time, his way. And the truth is, a lot of them might have packed up and moved on to the next village. Some might have moved away, stepped away, frustrated, angry. And God had a plan for the disciples later on for the ripple effect, the resurrection ripple effect that it was just like, oh, Lord Jesus, I think a lot of people in ministry, our hearts are as big as Texas or bigger. And we want to meet needs. We recognize them, we see them where other people don't see them. And yet ultimately to be spirit-led. And that required some really hard no's in my life. Some hard no's with my kids, with ministry. I loved, when our kids were little, I loved teaching Sunday school. I was, most of my life, like I was a stay-at-home mom of these 5 crazy kids living in the hospital, basically. And I love Sunday school teaching, but I hit my capacity limits with our special needs and my exhaustion and the time that it would take. Because I loved handcrafting the curriculum. Like I would kind of use the launching pad, but was just too much. And that was a painful no. My kids always wanted a dog. Like every kid should have a dog. But I could not take care of one more thing. They were too little, and I knew it would land on mama. When our kids, we didn't follow some of the norms of getting kids in so many activities young. Like we really limited that. And part of us were almost blessed. We had so many special needs. Like there it was, and we lived out in the country. There were fewer opportunities. We waited until middle school that there, and we would do special things. Like in the summer, we'd capitalize on different things. But once the kids were in, like, we recognized we could not go to every game of our kids. And so we said we're going to be at home games, but we can't go to away games. And people's like mouths would drop. Like, what? Like they were horrified that we wouldn't be at every game. And so the pressure of and being confident, like God has called us like that. Like that's what we give our kids is 360 stuff. Like it's a full circle. And having my butt in a bleacher every time there was a game was not what it like. And it is so, it very likely is the right thing for other folks, but for our family, like, yeah, what God is calling us is so unique. We have to be listening. So, yeah, guilt.
I wondered, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about the cycle, right, of rest and hearing from God. And then when you hear from God, you feel the permission to rest. Like, have you all experienced just that as almost a cyclical thing where one feeds the other?
Yeah.
Because I wonder how often our guilt stays unexamined when we stay in the busy cycle. And then whenever we do have the space to stop, we can sit with God and experience something different, even hear his voice speaking into our busyness or our schedule. Maybe it's not even that busy so much as just not in alignment with where he might be leading us. But those rhythms of rest kind of give us that space to hear from him.
Yeah. Personal retreat is so critical to my well-being. Like my morning time is bucket filling, but sometimes when I really need a wake-up call or check, like I stepping away from everything that's familiar. And I've got some favorite places, and sometimes I know I need like a new place. But God, that was the change agent in my life. Like I was convicted about Sabbath keeping, but it was kind of emotionally messy. Like I lived to work, I loved to work, and I would look forward. My Sabbath day was a Monday. Back when I was working in a church in Chicago, and I'd land in that day, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't. And I call myself the most faithful, miserable Sabbath keeper the Lord has ever seen. Like I was faithful, and I was miserable. I just was like, I could be getting so much done. But God pursues us, and a staff mandate. Our pastor went to a Eugene Peterson conference and came home back to us and said, okay, guys, we're going to go on personal retreat every month for 6 months on church time, paid. I want to know what day. Let me know. Yeah, like here's a place. And I kind of laugh. Like I don't think he'd ever been on a personal retreat. Like there was no teaching. There was no. And my first thought was, oh, I need this. And then I panicked. Like as much as I love time in the Word, I'm like 8 hours alone to pray. Like I'm an extrovert. Like, and so I thought I'm going to. I was taking a group of kids on a mission trip. And this was like in, I don't know, 90 or 91. And there wasn't as much out. I'm like, I'm going to plan. I'll be in the Word. I'll plan all the Bible studies, all the devotions. Like this is going to be super. And so I packed 2 big bags and I was heading out the door. And I ran like divine encounter. Like run hard, rest well may not be here today if it was not for that moment. That his name was Jock. Jock was walking in as I was walking out, and he looked at me and these 2 big bags on my shoulder, and he said, Brenda, where are you going? And I said, well, today's my first personal retreat. And he said, are you bringing work? And without any shame, I'm like, yes, I'm going to get so much done. And in so many words, he said, no, you're not. Like what I want you to do today. And this was my teaching. This is where I want you to rest well. Brenda, he looked at me like, I want you to rest well. I want you to listen carefully. And I want you to produce nothing. Like And what God did in that time, it was November, it was 34 degrees and raining hard. I drove through McDonald's, picked up a kid's Happy Meal, and went from concrete to cornfield. The retreat center forgot to put on the heat on this little cabin that I was supposed to be at. And oh my goodness. But God met me there uh, to be away from all the demands and distractions. And I tasted rest for the first time. And as I tasted it, I was able to bring it. I felt it finally. I felt it. And I was able to then bring it back to my Sabbath. Yeah. Slowly. Jacob wrestling, but God won. God won.
And I love that story. One thing that I've really leaned into kind of on that same level is just as busy with the days, but they're busy for everyone, right, throughout the day. And one thing that I've leaned into is taking those little moments throughout the day and just listening, just stopping. I have a beautiful front porch and I have a beautiful patio. And I have really leaned into like all these extra, I don't know about where everybody else is at, but here in Michigan, it is like summer weather still.
Gorgeous, yes.
And so taking that 5 minutes at 7 p.m. at night or 8 minutes to go sit out somewhere and just not hearing the noise.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I have leaned into those and I try to, pass those on to other people too. But it's sometimes for me, when we're in those busy seasons, to stop and take those moments that we can get.
Little bit.
And just little bits, because they turn into massive reboot for me.
Good.
Yeah.
I loved how she talked about silence, solitude, sleep, and Sabbath as the rhythms. And those are, I think the first two are the ones that we can lie to ourselves about, silence and solitude, because in ministry, it's kind of like, I heard some of this, Pam, from something you were saying. We can just say, all right, I'll take this next appointment. I'll just take this next call. I'll just peek at my phone. And then a small little peak becomes an hour, 2 hours. It compounds. And if we're compounding in the wrong direction, we can wake up on the brink of burnout. That's how quick this thing moves. And so without that unmoving piece of the puzzle where we mask off, stop lying to yourself. It's not just one more call. It's not just one more appointment. It's overworking. And it's underutilizing faith in these rhythms that are so important in our lives.
Yeah.
So helpful. And I love, even in the course of this conversation, we've hit a couple of different rhythms. Even just the idea we talked about throughout the day, multiple times a day to stop. We talked about a weekly Sabbath, right? An opportunity each week, and then a retreat, which that can be every month. It might be every 6 months,
right,
depending on seasonally where you're at, how often you might need that. We didn't really touch on sabbatical, but that would kind of fit there too. Like after so many years, taking a bigger block. So these are just some of the practical ways, right, that we can start doing this. So I do want to take just a minute. We're going to wrap up pretty soon, but do you guys have any other like nuggets like that you might want to share with someone who's trying to get started? Like someone's listening to this and they're saying, man, I need to start somewhere. What would you say? Like, hey, start here, or this would be one thing you could try tomorrow.
For me personally, that's about taking the time to honor the offering that I'm giving to God. So many things we do in ministry is public. It's we look at results. When do you put in the time to acknowledge the amount of energy that you expended to put into a message on one Sunday and celebrate that before the Lord and delight yourself in that? Honor the labor, not just the results. Honor that process and For me, it just helps me to be more relationally driven rather than results driven. And I think that was a big part of Israel's. We mentioned Egypt, that whole thing. Out of Egypt, I called my son. Well, what's that about?
Mm,
It's about a peculiar people that
mhm,
are different than the world. And I think that's a big part of why Brenda's message not only works in the church, but in the professional world,
Yep.
because God really made us this way. And so for me, my takeaway, especially like from this conversation today, is just make sure that that needle doesn't move in the wrong direction. Stay focused on that time, honor it, and just let the Lord, we take care of planting the seeds. That other stuff, that's up to him. Fruit's up to him.
yeah.
And when I Sabbath and I steward that well,
Mm,
okay, and I'm stewarding it as much as I can, he takes care of the stuff I can't control.
mm, mm, mm,
And I think for me too, kind of along those same lines, is just really knowing and taking the time to be fed first, because
mm,
then I can feed better.
mm,
I can give so much more when my soul is well rested.
mm,
Um, and I've learned that definitely over the last 2.5 years. And what will be. God's got it all anyway. And just stewarding that better, stewarding
mm,
myself better so I can help steward other people well.
mm, mm, mm. I think my final, it's just those hard stops, like hard stop for a bedtime, hard stop for Sabbath rest. And maybe guys, in the beginning, it's 2 or 3 hours on a Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning, small steps. Go outside for 5 minutes. Sit, watch, feel the breeze, watch the light in the trees, watch leaves fall. Put your feet in the grass. When we put our feet in the grass, our bodies release even more calming, restorative hormones. Hug a tree. I love people hugging trees because trees put out pheromones. And when we breathe in those pheromones, it causes our body to release calming, restorative. So um, hard stops and then small steps, like no guilt, no shame. We are going to celebrate small steps because we're working against decades of this message has not been cultivated in us. We're not seeing other people rest well. So, yeah, grace, compassion, Jesus' arms just open wide.
Love it. So good.
Well, yeah, thank you guys, each of you, for joining us for this call today. And what a beautiful conversation. I know, like, even for myself, there's things that I'm going to be taking away and churning just over in my mind and figuring out, okay, how do I lean into this even more? There are ways to stay connected to Brenda's ministry as well. So around Hard Rest Well, there's a website you can go to, and you can find lots of different ways to connect. Vantage Point, her book that we've mentioned several times on this call, like that's a resource you can find and buy. And so we'll even be dropping some of those resources into the chat. But if you have questions or want to connect, like, please let us know, because there's ways to go beyond. We're hoping that this conversation isn't just like a one and done situation, but that it spurs you on to really embracing a new lifestyle. And we hope, Brenda's one resource for that, and there might be even others. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, again, thank you guys so much. What a joy it's been just to get to know you guys better and then even share this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is a delightful, beautiful way to spend an hour.
Yes. Thank you for the invitation to participate.